Join thousands of other smart business owners who have finally realized review sites, daily deal sites, and pay-per-click ads are just too expensive and simply don't work. They have learned the power of becoming a Scout Puppy local trusted merchant and are being rewarded with new customers and solid steady growth for their small business. The experts at Scout Puppy build you a powerful one-page standalone website on steroids hosted on their platform. It includes all content writing, paired with over 40 strong keywords, pictures of your small business, a video, links back to your existing company website or social media, and contact info. They then submit your website to over 200 search engines, giving you maximum exposure to receive tons of free organic traffic and new customers. All of this for just $89 a month, no contracts. Go to scoutpuppy.com and click Add Your Business to sign up today. And on the checkout page, our savvy listeners get a 50% discount for the first month. Enter SBR50.
Savvy Business Radio, drawing out the best from our guests with our host, Christina Nichman.
Our guest today is Dale W. Cox. He has worked for more than 23 years in the food industry, primarily in new product development and process improvement. He has worked for some of the largest food companies, including General Mills and Kellogg. Today he shares his fascinating new book, Get the Heck Out of Our Way. Examples of government regulations that are eroding our freedoms, holding back the economy, costing us money, and what we can do about it. Find out more about Dale and his book at dalewcox.com. Hi, Dale. Welcome to Savvy Business Radio and our Heartbeat of the World segment. It's so great having you here this afternoon.
Thanks for having me on.
Oh, you betcha. I'm really excited to have you talk on a very interesting topic we've not quite talked about. And you're talking about your new book, Get the Heck Out of Our Way. It's really talking deeply about how we've become really over government regulations in business, and where we do need regulations to run effectively in our country, it's kind of gotten overdone. And you're going to go into a little bit about how this came about. Before we go there, your book touched on, though, that it hadn't always been like this. We started out the country where businesses could grow freely and give value to the market, and people saw value, they bought the goods. But it's gotten to the point round about the Depression era where things started to change. Tell us a little bit about your research in that area.
Yeah, so in the during the era of the Depression, or around that time, there was a lot of need associated with the general population, and there was a lot of course, speculation about what the overall causes were. Mm-hmm. But there was a need that was out there. Mm-hmm. And there was a group of a contingent anyway, mm-hmm. who went about to solve that need through the government, mm-hmm. By creating many of the programs that still exist today, including like Social Security, mm-hmm. and then what all of that has become. Many of the additional departments in the federal government, and those have continued to expand over the years. As you said, prior to that, mm-hmm. There were very few safety nets, so to speak, from a social standpoint, and very minimal regulations mm-hmm. associated with what could be done by businesses and what have you. Now, as you said, we have to have some regulation, because otherwise there would be chaos in the country. Mm-hmm. But again, as you said, it's my feeling is, and I think mm-hmm. just about anybody, if they pay attention, is it's gone way overboard.
From your perspective, what do you think the turning point was? Now, we know the Great Depression. My grandma lived through it. She talked about how there was ration on food and sugar mm-hmm. and basic necessities. But what made the people of the United States, the citizens, think, hey, this has gotten out of hand, government, you come fix it? Because before that, the federal government's main goal, and always had, that's set up by our founders, was really to protect the country, to be the voice head, like the president would go out there and be the figurehead of the entire country. This is the spokesman or person of our country, and you're here to protect our borders inside and out. But where did we get to the point where we decided, hey, federal government, you fix all our problems? How did that come about?
That's a really good question. And I think I'm not sure I know the answer to that. I do know that it continues today. I think it's the easy thing for any of us, really, right?
Yeah.
If we're having a rough day, if there's somebody who will come in and take care of us, that's great and that's nice.
Yeah.
But it certainly isn't the way that we learn in order to how to improve ourselves and how to prevent those bad days in the future without somebody else having to do it for us.
Yeah.
So, as far as how that came about and how we allowed that to happen, I think that's a fairly complex question.
It's very interesting, Dale. When you hear teenagers at home, at that point in time, you're getting very antsy, rebellious. You kind of want to just run your own show, but you don't have all the tools necessary to be a full functioning adult yet. But I've heard teenagers say, well, if my parents would just let me do whatever, just give me my allowance. And I'm thinking to myself, well, it doesn't work that way. You don't get to have total, complete anonymity and freedom, but hey, parents, give me an allowance. It's like you either go out and be an adult and run all your functioning, get your food and your shelter and everything like that, or you live under your parents' roof and you follow their rules. But it's kind of like we've gotten like that now. We kind of want the government to come in and be our parents, but at the same time we want complete, or we want to be free at the same time. And it's kind of like the same thing as a teenager at home who wants to just be free and rebellious and do what they want, but at the same time don't want it to have the responsibility.
Exactly. Yeah. And they don't work well together, either of those viewpoints. It's definitely clear that, how we've gotten to today is because we have allowed it to happen, because it's certainly as citizens of the United States, we have the capability to say, hey, no, enough is enough. We can't do this any longer, and put a stop to it, through elections and through other means that are within the Constitution. And that's part of what I talk about in my book. It's difficult, and it requires us to be educating ourselves and making the more difficult choices, as saying, no, this program sounds great. I'd love to have, income when I fall on hard times. As opposed to having to go to my family and stay in the basement or whatever it is. But the way our country, became great, and what attracted so many people to come here was because they could come, and there were relatively minimal taxes, a great amount of freedom, no safety net or very minimal safety net, but great people. So if people did fall on hard times, generally there were people around that would help, but locally, not federally. Local charities or family members. You relied on each other. You could fail fast at a business or whatever job you had, and then move on and improve and go to the next. But that was part of what was attractive. It was very pioneering spirit. And coming and being proud at doing something for yourself and moving forward.
Was it really the fact that because you were able to fail and because they allowed you a small safety net, it allowed people to actually probably succeed more often than not because, hey, you messed up, you failed, now you start over and you learned, okay, I won't do that again. We're going to do it differently this time. But with the safety nets, it kind of allows you not to learn as much because you've got that, I'll just be picked up and bailed out.
Yeah, I think that's definitely part of it. The idea of, and in fact, more than that, fairly quickly, if there's systems like that, programs that provide you with income if you fall on hard times for whatever reason, if that goes on for very long at all, there's studies that show that pretty soon you come to expect that. And as opposed to being appreciative of it, it becomes an expectation. Like, say, hey, I am here. I'm alive. I have kids. Whatever. I've fallen on some hard times. Somebody needs to take care of me.
Or my children.
And that isn't. Yeah. And while I believe that it is our place to take care of each other, I definitely do not believe that it is the federal government or any government's place to take care of us.
And I love that you bring this up, Dale. This really brings to light for me the kind of general consensus I've seen of people who've hit on hard times. I remember a number of years ago, I fell on some hard times, and immediately my friend said, well, go and get some unemployment. You deserve it. You've worked for years and years. It's your money. And I thought, well, no, I should really look to get another job. I mean, if I absolutely totally need it, maybe I'll go for it. It was interesting to me that family and friends' first line of defense was, oh, go take a holiday and get some unemployment. You deserve it. And you're right. That whole mindset is that of, well, this is mine. I'm entitled to this money. The government needs to give it to me. And that's a very dangerous frame of thought, because if you start coming from that, oh, the government needs to give it to me, it's my money. What I've often thought lately, well, if all these programs are needed and you're entitled to it, where is it coming from? Because it's got to come from somewhere. There's not a magic pool of money like a little genie that just explodes resources and money out of nowhere. It has to come from the people working, the people who are being productive.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I believe you hit on two great points there. I believe that the root cause, I think, of how we've gotten to where we are today with 176,000 pages of regulations that none of us can keep track of, and almost 50,000 pages of laws that are, this is just in the federal on the federal side, is because we've become accustomed to looking to the government to solve our issues. And in fact, we demand it. As soon as anything, I mean, even, I don't know if I want to get into a controversial subject, but even like, for example, gun control.
Yep.
I think there's definitely things that can be done by communities to help, but I don't believe that we should be going straight to the federal government and saying, fix this. I think there's all kinds of unexpected consequences that happen when we do that. Yeah. And unfortunately, we've done that in many, many, many places.
Yeah.
The other thing you hit on is, where does the money come from? And I think, many of the safety net programs, so to speak, are either bankrupt or going bankrupt, in the near future. And where is that money going to come from? We don't know. But we've definitely seen examples around the world, Greece being the most recent one, where there were large safety nets associated with social programs. And eventually the money ran out, and the good credit of the country ran out, and those programs went away overnight. And boy, that was really hard on those people that were relying and dependent on those programs.
Absolutely.
They're coming out of it to some extent now, but it was not a fun transition. So hopefully we can avoid that here.
Absolutely. And Dale, what this recalls for me, I've heard from the other side, well, businesses have gotten far too big for their britches. They're all like greedy, and government needs to get them under control. And it's good that they go in there and regulate the heck out of them, la, la, la. And I'm thinking, no, a majority of businesses still, even today in this country, a majority of them are small business owners. And being that this show is based on majority of them, not super huge businesses like Amazon and Google, they haven't come to this show. It's been small business owners who've created value and brought wonderful things to the marketplace to make all of our lives better. And they're the ones getting hurt. So I think what people have to realize is that over-regulating not only hurts us individually, which is, we've actually shown that before with a guy that came to talk about general aviation regulations, which you think, hey, how did that affect me? That had to do with small airplanes or such. But it affects all of us on a day-to-day living, and even as an employee. Share some of your experiences of what you found being a small business owner on how some of the regulations have hurt you as a small business owner, your friends, and also how it affects us as citizens.
I could give you an example that wouldn't be common to everybody, but my wife and I, we moved into investing in real estate a little bit, and we built a house with our own hands. We sold it, bought a tiny little house, and used the sweat equity cash to get into, investing in some real estate, and eventually worked our way up to where we bought a small mobile home park. And that worked well for about 6 or 7 years or so. And then the Dodd-Frank Act was passed. And honestly, I wasn't even paying attention in the news. And I found out, but then I found out that our business model for running the mobile home park was pretty much thrown out the window because of the Dodd-Frank Act, which was supposed to go after large banks and predatory processes that they were supposedly doing. And I don't know that much exactly about what they were doing, but I do know how it affected us. In that our process was to make small loans to people so that they could purchase one of the mobile homes that was in our mobile home park. And this is like, $1, $2, $3, maybe $4,000 loans that they would pay back with low payments for over an extended period of time. And this was generally to people who had little to no credit.
Wow.
It worked out well for all of us. They got a place to live that they could call their own. We essentially acted as the bank. They were small loans, but being able to make loans on a repeated basis like that was one of the things that now required a federal license and a ton of paperwork. And a small cottage industry was coming up where people would do that paperwork for you, but the fee was like around $700 per loan.
Wow.
So on a $1,000 or a $2,000 loan, that was a pretty hefty fee. And generally the folks that we were giving these to didn't they didn't have hardly any money up front. So we would have had to cover that up front.
Wow.
So we ended up having to move into trying to rent out mobile homes instead of sell them. And that wasn't working well for us. Ultimately, we ended up having to sell the mobile home park to a company that owned like 20 or 25 mobile home parks. And they had the back office staff that could handle the paperwork. And that's something that I have noticed now since it affected us directly, time and time again, where small businesses are getting swallowed up by the big ones.
Yeah.
Because they can handle the paperwork. And one of the things that I talk about in the book too is the bureaucracy has become so big in the federal side that it's become kind of a self-perpetuating beast, so to speak, and that it's so big and there's so many regulations coming out that's actually what's required lobbyists. Because for any business or business group, like even the manufactured mobile or a home community, they have their own lobbying group. But you almost have to have it because the bureaucracy has become so big that you have to get in there and say, hey, wait a minute, you can't do this. This is going to kill us.
Yeah.
And then if you don't do that, you're likely to get killed. And even sometimes you get killed anyway.
Yeah. Stay tuned after these messages from our sponsor, AdRoll.
I got this phone call about 5:30, 6 a.m., was tasked with devising a go-to-market strategy for a rebrand. We knew that we had resonated with those hikers or those surfers or skiers, but we needed to expand our reach and make sure that these people were able to go from the boardroom to the board with our sunglasses. AdRoll was definitely instrumental in getting this new brand out there, both from a prospecting and remarketing standpoint, and they kind of helped me break down how the funnel looked and how we wanted to position our messaging. I was getting slacks from everyone at the company when they'd see an ad somewhere in the New York Times. Everyone was super stoked to see our new content and our new brand creative out there. They definitely helped me shine internally at Sunski from a marketing standpoint.
To find out how Sunski and 37,000 other brands grow their businesses with AdRoll, visit adroll.com/savvy. That's ADROLL.com/savvy.
Scary, Dale, and it kind of lends to what we were saying earlier. Then that it just makes it what we are all not wanting, which is where only huge businesses get to exist and the small mom and pops don't get to exist. And that's the exact opposite of what people want. People want their neighbors to be able to have that coffee shop on the corner, or we have this wonderful Chinese food down the corner that's one of the best in the area. They for a while had problems with so many taxes, regulations on their property. They had to shut down their business for a while to try to recoup. And we're going to lose all of that. We're not going to be able to go and have our wonderful small businesses in our area. Now, how do you see a solution for this? Because I know your book talks about this. What can we possibly do to change the tide on this?
Well, and that was the primary purpose of writing the book, was first to wake people up if they weren't already, help them recognize how even buying a gallon of milk, why does it cost what it does? Why does a gallon of gas cost what it does? And wake them up And then the second thing would be for them to understand what that's doing to us. It's reducing our freedoms. It's reducing a business's freedom, which is essentially our freedom. We might be a business owner. It's reducing our the choice that we have, just like you say. We might not have that corner shop anymore that we used to love because it got chased out, or we might not have the mobile home park that we got chased out of because we couldn't handle it, and now the whole tone of the place has changed. So first, to realize it's a problem, to recognize then that it's our problem because we're the ones that are allowing it to happen, and then there's a lot of things that we can do. We can the realization, I think, is the biggest part, but then taking it to the ballot box is the next thing that we can do. And making sure that our current elected officials understand that we don't necessarily want them to jump in and change things, and where that may be what's in the news, for some event that's happened, to contact them as well and say, hey, look, let's calm down a little bit. Let's not jump on exactly what seems the most logical thing to do right now. But let's think through this in a measured way, and does it really need to be handled at a federal level? And I would submit that 9 out of the 10 things that happen don't need to be, but they can be handled much better, much more efficiently at a very local level, even just in a city, as opposed to a county or a state, or certainly the federal level. I'm actually involved in the group for the Convention of States, which is one of the outlets that the framers of the Constitution gave us as citizens to amend the Constitution. If things were, and this one is particularly, if things were to ever get out of hand and the government wasn't fixing itself as it was designed to do, I would say that that's kind of where we're at.
Yeah. Very important point, Dale. And that is really what we can do as citizens is really start getting involved at a local level. And here's a prime example. We had a mayor election recently in New York this year. And when I talk to most citizens, they're like, why vote? It doesn't make a difference. We never win anyway. We don't get who we want. And a majority of the people I spoke to in New York were not pleased at the current mayor we have, and he got reelected. And I'm thinking everyone goes out with the idea that why vote in any of the elections, whether it be federal or local or even in your state, then what chance do we have to change things? So it really, I think you're right. It's becoming aware is the first step, realizing what's going on, but then taking responsibility with saying, yes, I will go and vote at all the elections, most importantly at our local level, councilmen and otherwise, and educate myself. Because when I hear that people are not happy with what's presently out there, but say, well, why bother figuring it out because they all kind of suck. I'm like, well, yeah, with that attitude, but nothing's going to change. But it's interesting. We had someone come on recently who's running for governorship in New York coming up this November, and he is running under the Libertarian Party ticket. Now, interestingly, people are like, well, we've got two parties. It's called the Democrat and the Republic. And if you vote anything else than the other party you don't want, it's going to get in. Well, that's become the kind of line or status quo line that people use. I'm like, well, yeah, if we all keep saying that, of course, that's going to be the case. But how about we all stop saying that and we vote for something other than what we've been given that we don't like? And if we all did that, guess what? We would get something different. So I think where it really starts now is people saying, enough is enough. We are going to vote different, and we're going to stop complaining about it and thinking we have no choices.
Yeah. At the very least, I mean, we could talk for quite a while about 2 parties versus 3 and how to get somebody in there. But at the very least, if there's sufficient votes for somebody else, whoever does win notices that, and then that may change what they advocate or what they do while they're in office to try and win over some of the people that had that viewpoint.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
So you're thinking, even if, hey, I voted Libertarian or some other party, it will make a difference, because if enough of us say something, then they're going to realize that people who get in office, my constituents are not happy. What do I have to do to make them happy? And they'll start working for us. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So
that's a great.
Yeah.
Now, you had some wonderful kind of real life examples of not just what you went through as a business owner, but what other people that you know very well have gone through as small business owners. Share some of those examples.
Okay. I mean, like, an awful lot of them I have at least some experience with.
Yeah.
I talk about Obamacare in there a little bit, but I don't know that there's a chapter in there that didn't affect me in some fashion. That one affected me quite a bit, but just in the fact that it prevented me from starting a business when I wanted to, because it changed the way that I could insure my family and the way that I had planned on doing it. I made it way too expensive. Well, first unavailable and then way too expensive.
Yeah.
I mean, it took me a while to figure out what else I could do, but I know. I actually was going to become a physician myself. And this was back in the late, that was my goal. I was going to be Dr. Cox.
Oh, awesome.
And it was back in the late 80s. I emergency medical technician and worked for a couple of years on an ambulance crew. And I loved working with the patients. But even at that time, the doctors that I worked with, they actually talked me out of going to medical school.
Wow.
Because even then, and it's gotten way worse since then, the malpractice premiums, because of the more and more litigious society, but were becoming very bad and difficult to deal with. But even more than that, the paperwork associated with dealing with regulations and insurance companies, which were also dealing with regulations, was becoming horrendous. And they said, if you're not going to absolutely die, if you don't become a doctor, do something else. And so I chose to do something else.
Wow. And
I have either friends or family that are either a dentist or a physician, and I've talked with them about what they're going through, and it's pretty bad. You know, that even, my own doctor that I've gone to for years here, they've had to change things up because he was a small office. It was just him with the staff, and you almost can't do that anymore, it seems, and survive with the paperwork that's required from the government. So I'm not exactly sure of what he had to do, but I know he had to change his location, join up with another group, so that he could get some help with all of that paperwork. And it's a similar thing with someone I know who's a dentist.
Dale, this reminds me, my general practitioner, one of the best doctors I've ever met, really, really cares about his patients, told me several years ago he was so stressed with paperwork that he wanted to quit being an MD. He just wanted to quit being a doctor. And it's interesting because when we grew up, what did our parents used to tell us? Either become a doctor or marry one, because you'll have a wonderful life, because you'll be doing well financially. And not so true, actually. Not so true anymore at all. So, it's quite sad. But I want people to find out for themselves, but learn how these regulations are affecting all of us, whether you own a small business or not, and how it affects us on our daily lives. And they can find out more about your book. Where can they get your book?
It's available on Amazon. And most bookstores, you can order it directly. If you go online to like Barnes and Noble or Amazon, or almost, most of them, it's out there. So. Okay.
Yeah. So everyone, please go Get the Heck Out of Our Way book today on Amazon. And I just want to thank you for sharing your great experiences today and your wisdom today on Savvy Business Radio. Thank you.
Thank you for having me on.
Savvy Business Radio broadcasts worldwide via a large podcast network, celebrating business owners, entrepreneurs, influencers, and successful individuals. Find out about our paid sponsorship opportunities or how to become a guest. Call 732-474-7375 or email Christina@savvybusinessradio.com.